Hey everyone, what is going on? What is going on? Welcome. My name is Curtis Brooks. I am a men's life coach. I help men communicate from their brokenness to wholeness so they can move forward and claim healthy relationships. Guys, today we have an absolutely wonderful show for you today. On behalf of the Huddle, we are doing a show within a show entitled Men Are Simple. What say you? Of course, we want to hear from you. We want to know what your thoughts are, your comments, your suggestion tips, and all those other things you'd be so inclined to share. We may or may not agree with you, and that's okay. So this is just kind of just chitter chatter. We're talking, we're having a conversation. So that being said, within each of the platforms, I have placed a link, and I'll probably have to do that in just a few moments. But I there's a link on YouTube. So if you're so inclined to be part of a discussion, part of the conversation, that means that you're going to be camera ready. Your lighting is looking good so that we can see you, and you'll be part of the broadcast. We'll bring you in from backstage, and you can share your thoughts and views about this particular topic. So that being said, guys, I have a guest co-host that is, and he's going to tell you more about himself, guys. Hey, Mark, what's going on, man?
Hey, Curtis, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. Welcome, welcome.
Good.
So
Thanks so
today,
much for having me.
obviously, the title of the show, "Men Are Simple." What say you? And so, before we dive more into that, because I know that you have a lot to say about this subject, we've talked quite a bit. Well, not a whole lot, but we've had some pretty good conversations for the few times that we've talked. So, that being said, go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, and love the work you're doing. I've been following you online for a while. I really love the way we met. You and I was like a synchronistic
Right.
introduction. Someone just said, "Hey, I know this other guy. I think you guys would really get along," and they were right. So I really enjoyed meeting you, and we've had a bunch of conversations. My name is Mark D, and essentially, I help dads who are struggling through fatherhood to find their way through mental fitness and to be able to control their emotions, their mindset, and regain ability to gain their confidence so they can save their families. And I do that through this program that helps people build their brains muscles. There's no other way to say it. So I love working with guys who are shifting through the challenges of fatherhood and all the things that come with that, whether it be the stress or the need to develop new tools and skills. And yeah, so I just love this work. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you again, Mark, for joining us on this great discussion. And so, in this discussion, we're going to try to get to the bottom of some stuff tonight. Tonight, man, we're going to
We're going to
answer all those
solve it.
questions.
We're just going to solve it.
We're going to solve some problems tonight. So, that being said, so what do you think about this topic here? Men are simple.
Well, as you said, I've got a lot of thoughts on it. I think I might be the appropriate person for this conversation because I don't think I'm a simple man, and
Mm.
so I think I wonder sometimes if it's a matter of presentation, or it's a matter of individuality. Not every man's the same. Not every human's the same. Um, but I also think that sometimes the simplicity that appears to be man's way comes from a isolated isolated need, like an isolated thing
Mm.
that most men are looking for, and I think that's freedom. So I think a lot of that revolves around that theme, and that's my first thoughts
Mm.
on it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so, I'm sure a lot of people might be wondering, men are simple, whether that's true or not. To some people that might be the case, but I definitely was not talking or did not come up with this title for the sake of destroying or crushing men or anything ridiculous like that. But
Oh no.
uh, the title came from, for me, the title came from a space where just and different relationships that I've been in the past where, and I thought, so wait a minute now, why are these particular discussions that I have in the past, and just this kind of retrospect, if you will, obviously. But why are these conversations seeming to be so complicated? And I
Mm,
knew, for me, my perspective at the time, and again, just a kind of collective thought, if you will, it was more so, um, wait a minute now, why does it appear to be all these different conversations that I've had, they seem to be so complicated, and yet my needs, or at least my thinking about what I was expecting them to say or do, was absolutely so simple. It didn't need a whole lot of thought. Oh, hey, what's going on, Andre? Thanks for joining us, brother. So it didn't need a whole lot of thought, but it was just simple. Like coming home from work and dinner's ready, just simple. And it doesn't take away from the woman in regards to what she may have had to do that earlier that day or anything like that, but just simple. So we're going to start with simple needs. Simple needs. And again, this is absolutely no bearing on men in regards to us being simple in the way of not having a wherewithal or lacking certain capacities by any
You
stretch
don't
of the
you don't mean simple-minded is what you're saying, yeah.
absolutely,
Right, yeah,
absolutely,
yeah. No, absolutely
absolutely.
not, yeah.
Yeah,
And I think you've kind of, nailed it on the head, the needs, what do we need fulfilled? What do we need, um, to to be satisfied, to be happy?
right.
I think that's important aspect to look at. So you were talking about your previous relationships and your questions. So what I'm hearing is you're having these conversations, and I was wondering from the conversations, was the simple aspect from the expectations, or was it from your approach to them?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it, Mark. But yeah, it was actually, I think it was both. It was my approach that was obviously, just having put it together in my own mind already.
Right.
So it was my approach, and then it was the expectation because once I put it together in my mind, here was the results. You just needed to respond this way. It's kind of like that conversation us men have with our wives, our significant others, and where it's a yes or no answer.
Yeah.
so that was kind of the way I was looking at it. Again, just that had already figured it out, knew what I was looking for, and in most cases got something completely different. So
Right. Okay. So that's interesting. Yeah. No, I'm hearing two different aspects. There is sort of
mhm,
a bit of the expectation piece, right? Like
absolutely
I'm looking for yes or no, and I'm expecting a yes or no, and then it turns into a different conversation, right? And then
right, right, right,
I
right.
wonder sometimes if that's where the that's where the difference in complexity is. And the
Mm,
complexity is communication style sometimes
right, right,
makes it a little more complicated. I know for a fact, like from my experience in the past, I would say that um, when it comes to simplicity of manhood or fatherhood, in my case, things were. It's interesting. Becoming a father was something that changed the complexities of my life,
right.
um, and so one of my values is service. Being in
Mhm.
service and dutiful towards my family.
Right,
And so, in my mind, it's simple. I just get it done.
right.
There's XYZ needs for my I'm Canadian, by the way, Z.
Yeah,
XYZ needs for the uh, folks in the United States listening. Uh, and I just need to accomplish them. So how do I get there? How does it look when I deliver it?
right,
And then there comes this other aspect. If there's a challenge or if it's not received, you know, I also believe my responses to those can be simple, but when you involve others, then it becomes complex. So I think there's a two-edged sword with it. Um, I need to deliver, and that's my expectation of myself. And once I've done that, then that's only within myself. That's the only thing
right.
I'm expecting is my own outcome for it. So
Now, in those needs as well, do you think that the need is to also have simple communication? Whereas that, because even before we got started, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, it talks about uh, being understood. So if you want to be understood, you must first understand, seek to understand others.
mm, mhm,
And so, and I think obviously this can go for both men and women for sure, absolutely.
absolutely, yeah.
But I think for the individual who's been in relationships, one after the other, or just in a long-term relationship, where you come across you come up against that wall, if you will, and then I think every relationship has it where you're you're just not understanding each other. You
Yeah,
know.
no, absolutely. And I think, what came to me when you mentioned the words of that scripture was, uh, seek to understand. And I
Mm,
think simplicity comes from also understanding yourself, right? A
absolutely.
very dominant uh, theme in men's work is know thyself, right? So
Mm,
that comes from understanding yourself, knowing what your needs and your requirements are, and how you're going to deal with stuff, and what kind of man you are. Um, and I think that does create simplicity because for men, that's a structure.
mm,
And so everything stems from that understanding. Now, there's some complexity with how well do you know yourself and how much are you willing to know the other person. So
mm,
I really like what you put it forward there because it made me think about, yeah, right. I need to also seek to have knowledge of the other person. And I'm going to go way back. You may remember Women Are From Venus, Men Are From Mars,
mm.
a
Absolutely.
classic book. And
Yeah.
that really lays down the groundwork around the communication stuff. You
Sure.
know, uh, knowing thyself is not a purely masculine endeavor. I think women, learn about themselves as well and figure out what they need and want. But then it comes to when we talk about our needs, that's where the some of the complexities come in. Um, so I think how you approach that is what creates either the
Mm,
simplicity or the complexity. And I think structure creates simplicity for men. I don't know
mm.
if that works both ways, but that's my
Absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely. You know, one thing I discovered with men, or at least with myself, and obviously I can't speak for all men, but I think obviously, like you said earlier, that first to seek to understand thyself is a huge piece, is a huge piece. And I think that when you are on that journey seeking to understand thyself, to know
Mm,
thyself, you get to a place where the load becomes light. Um, and the journey is still the journey, but the load becomes a little lighter.
mm,
And I think that when the load becomes a little lighter, there are those things that obviously life continues and you're going to be hit with different challenges here and there throughout the course of life. And that's just life. But
life. Yeah.
I think that our response becomes more tempered, more weathered, and just we don't fly off the handle on small things or even big things. You know, we go in to try and solve it, and I'll tell you about that. My one of my challenges still today, and but yeah, we go and try and solve it, and so I think in trying to solve it, uh, we are we finally come to a place where there's a reliance on what we know.
Right. Yeah.
There's a security in what we know, and so we're not as swayed easily as we were when we were younger without said information, you know?
Yeah. Uh, I agree with you. I mean, I think that's part of this presentation of simplicity. It's that's an aspect of maturity, uh,
Absolutely.
wisdom. The confidence come from knowing, the confidence that comes from knowing yourself
Right.
is, whether it's been that you've seen this situation before and you know what works and doesn't work, and
Right.
so you're not going to be strayed, from it.
Right.
Um, or you've done the healing, or you know in some cases pushed it down so far that it doesn't for
Right.
create reaction anymore, which is in my opinion unfortunate. But if it works, then it works.
Mm,
um but I think I want to go back to you talking about solving things. You mentioned solving it, and I think that's sort of also part of the framework for simplicity.
mm,
Okay, something's happening. It's something I'm either not used to or I've seen before, and we agreed there was an outcome at the end of this. And then so, you know, now that I'm in the situation, I'm going to solve it. And that's just how,
Right.
that's what I do. Cause that's, you know, either my role or my approach or my way of,
Right.
you know, reacting to the situation. But I've also
Absolutely.
been told that that, you know, that need or that drive to solve is what causes some of the complexity in relationships in
Ooh,
terms of,
that's
so
good one.
it's a what's the word? It's a paradox, you know, it's a double-edged sword, it's a paradox. So what do you think about that? What do you think about this paradox I've brought up for us?
Woo, man, that's good stuff there, Mark. Because just as you mentioned that, and when I was talking just moments ago, I was going to say I'll share this particular story, and that has been my challenge, because I
Okay.
think
Okay.
as men we are we have a tendency to be more logical, predisposed to be logical. And again, it doesn't mean that we can't be emotional. And then obviously with women who are more leaning towards emotional, doesn't mean that it can't be logical. So let's squash all that nonsense. Because one thing the show is not about, it's not about crushing or destroying either sex, male or female. So we're having a conversation, guys, and hopefully we can answer some questions for all who will view it currently uh, live or watch the replay. But in answer to your question, Mark, for me, I oftentimes for me, I quickly go to that space of trying to solve it. So my wife will say XYZ happened at work, and and man, that is one of my challenging areas, man. It is. It is. It's one of my challenging areas. And so she'll say XYZ happened today at work. And
So what's the challenge?
yeah, the challenge for me is that I'm trying to fix it. And in most cases, she's just venting. And so I've even said, hey, look, okay, so raise your hand or give me some kind of sign that lets me know that you're just venting and that I don't have to solve it. And even with kind of little things that we're doing, or at least things that I've suggested, it still doesn't work because now I'm talking so much because I don't even see your hand raised now. So
Right. You've created your own meta paradox. It's like within the
absolutely,
paradox you're trying to fix.
absolutely, yeah. So
Yeah, you know,
that's one of my challenges there, man, for sure.
I hear you. I don't think you're alone on that. I think
Mhm.
so many relationships probably have that challenge, you know.
Right.
When I'm in a good place and I'm doing well as a partner, you know, I'll
Mhm.
sometimes say, um, you know, for this conversation, how would you like me to show up? Like, are we problem solving? Do you need listening? You know, do you need someone to
Right.
listen? Do you need space? I don't do that always, you know.
Mhm.
I'll assure everybody listening that even though I coach fathers and
Right.
been doing this, you know, I've been doing coaching for 15 years, I still tick off my partner at least once a week, and probably I would say that that probably number is higher than I think it is.
Right,
Um,
right.
the difference is comes from that piece of like how that ends up. So it doesn't end up in me digging a bigger hole or getting reactive because I showed up as a problem solver when I probably should have showed up as someone
Mhm.
creating space, and then I get offended because like I'm just trying to help, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and again, I'm not always perfect by any means, but I'm more aware and more mature in these situations now, and also I have the power to command myself like before I didn't. Um, and so it's a case of oh, whoops, okay, I showed up differently than I was.
Mhm.
Someone wanted to. This isn't always with your partner either, of course. And then I shift, I adjust, and so internally I'm solving something else than what I thought I was solving, and what I'm solving is showing up in a way that's human, in a way that's helpful. Um, it's funny because I laughed inside because I can feel your dilemma. You know,
Yes.
it's like, yeah, no, put your hand up when put your hand up when I'm not doing it the right way. And it's like, well,
Right, right.
so that, is it the other person's responsibility? You know, this is where this is where I think the paradox of the question are men simple? Yes, we're simple on our own minds because we're like, well, if I'm not showing up like you want, just put your hand up. You know, that's a simple thing.
Right.
But what I think sometimes that happens, and I think I've seen this in my own question of like, how are we showing up here? Is this problem solving or soundboarding
Mm.
or just support in general? I think even the question itself, to us, it's simple. I'm asking a question so I can be what I need to be. And maybe to the other party, it's like, well, if I didn't have to answer that question, this would go better for me. And
Right,
so situationally, it's not simple. So I think it's hard to delineate. It's hard to be just simple,
right,
and I
right.
think that's like we've exam both of us have given an example here of how we create our own dilemmas through a paradox of trying to be simple or
Absolutely,
assuming
absolutely.
simpleness.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things, this is months ago. Actually, just I think me and my wife, we weren't even dating yet, but
Okay.
yes, in any event. And I, again, part of that simplicity, when I say men are simple, and here's another piece of it, I guess, because like you said, it is pretty expansive. Can mean a lot of different things. But here's one other piece of, I guess, what I'm meaning as well is because I remember she had given me something in regards to my coaching service that I've been working on and been
Okay.
trying to build. And I was so, I mean, to her, it may not have been much, but I was so taken back by her generosity. And I remember she needed something because one of my other many hats that I wear is digital marketing. So she needed something for her LinkedIn profile. And man, I remember when she, again, just out of her generosity, I remember I think I was away, been away from home, but yet she had sent me this large file just of stuff that would normally be expensive. But out of her generosity, when I got back home, man, I created her LinkedIn profile, made it look good, and just had it all together. It normally would have taken it would have taken me a reasonable amount of time, but I did it just like that because of her generosity. It it really kind of provoked me, and so that was part of that simplicity. When I say men are simple, that's also what I'm meaning because I think it doesn't take a whole lot, at least for me. And so, what do you think about that? Does that kind of
Yeah,
jive
let
with
me
you?
let me reflect. I want to make sure I understand your example. Um, I have a couple different groups of both band of brothers and also work groups that I work with. Like it's about
Mhm.
supporting each other and talking through stuff. And one of the things I've heard myself say is I'm a workhorse, and if there was just X, whatever X is, I'll make something up. Let's say it's if there was more hugs, I'd be even more of a workhorse.
Right.
You know, so it's like I think what you're implying is that there's this opportunity for men to be simple in the reward system or like the exchange system, even.
Absolutely.
Um, and I do know of a few men who like to count. You know, um, you did this, I did this, you did this, I did
Hmm.
this. And I think that's a simple. It's a. I want to exchange the word simple with something like easy framework or easy
Hmm.
structure to kind of like relate
Interesting.
to.
Hmm.
So, hey, I'm not awful in my mind. I've counted these things, and that's sort of like a very
Hmm.
easy framework to kind of reference. Um, and even in my example, it's like, yeah, if you just hug me more, I'd work even harder.
Right. 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 Right.
And I think that's the theme of the simplicity you're talking about. And
Right.
what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing is
Hmm.
you got this wonderful gift you didn't expect, and then all of a sudden you're invoked, to do
Right.
extra, stuff that you might have
Right.
planned for another week from now
Right.
or whatever it might be.
Right.
So, do I have that
Absolutely.
on
Yeah.
target?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen examples of it, and you tell the story, and I can think of my own examples. So there might be some truth
Mhm.
to it. Again, like you
Absolutely.
said, don't generalize for all men, but in my experience, that's
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I even said to my wife not too long ago in regards to just and I don't know if I told you, but yeah, we have a daughter on the way.
oh,
Uh,
congratulations,
mm,
man, that's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you. And so
Oh,
I'm super excited
congrats.
about that. Super excited.
Yeah.
And so I remember saying to my wife, I said, you know what? Because for me, I think in my mind, I just had something to solve in regards to men and women, the relationship between men and women. And I said, well, wait a minute now. if a man responds to his daughter a certain way, meaning that in most cases he's going to go all out for her. That's just the
Right.
nature of a man with his daughter. And I say jokingly with my wife, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to tell her to sit down and just behave, and but jokingly, and she was like, "Yeah, right." So, and so and so when I say that to her, I say, "Wait a minute now. If women can understand how a father responds to his daughter, and though she obviously doesn't have the issues that life may, you know, bring up at some
Create the
time."
complexity. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Crazy complexity. She may not have those things, but in its simplest form, it's love.
Right.
It's love. And so I say to my wife, I said, wait a minute now. If a woman can understand that, where does the problem lie in?
Can you expand that question for me?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it's more so that, again, out of this simplicity, this simple space, that
Yeah.
that it's not so much as if I do for you, if you do for me, I'll do for you,
Right.
as as it is that if you're doing these simple things, it just opens up. It opens me up because I love you. It opens me up because I care about you. It opens me up because I
Mm.
want to see you succeed. It opens me up because I want to just do for you. I want to be a blessing to you. It just opens me up.
Yeah. No. Amen, brother. Do you mind if I juxtapose you?
Absolutely. Go ahead, man. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think you're right. And you're in your example with a daughter.
Mhm.
Um, the daughter doesn't have to do anything
Right.
for you to exude that love. And so, um, before I go on, I want to the reason I started into this journey with coaching fatherhood. I used to do leadership coaching. I did it for a couple years. It was going pretty well before COVID. Things kind of got messed up with COVID, and I got into a program to kind of build things out differently. And I realized that I'd been in leadership for a long time. Every challenge I ever saw in leadership, not every challenge, but eventually through experience and maturity, leadership challenges became opportunities to become a better leader. And still not perfect at that, but I certainly am better than I was
Right.
10 years ago. And I just had this, you know, why did I become a leadership coach? So I did that because I truly believed workplaces are potentially a place that are more toxic than they need to be, and we spend a lot of time in the workplace. So humans having better workplaces can help expand love in the world, and that's essentially my driver. And I had that reflection while thinking about becoming a father, and I realized, well, if I do this work for fatherhood, I will have the capacity to, expand like I did as a leader. So I was interested in, and I truly believe parents, but specifically men as fathers, have the capacity to completely expand the amount of love that's given in the world. So with that as my foundation, my response to your example is that um, w- we need to take the leadership in
Mhm.
providing that love
Right.
so that our families can give that love.
Right. Absolutely.
And 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 I know you know this from talking with you previously, but if men show up angry or their work is stressing them out or they have the inability to uh, process, if things are too not simple enough for them to handle, and they become frustrated, these things are in the fear quadrant. There's fear and love
Sure.
essentially in my opinion.
Mhm.
And uh and and so I think it's our duty as men to love unconditionally, just like we would our daughter. So in one hand, I definitely say like, hey, if I just got more hugs, I'd be a harder worker. But I also again, when I'm in a responsible place, I'll call it, I ask myself, what am I doing to provide opportunities for hugs?
Mm,
Right. And so that's kind of my answer for you. It's like or my response to your thought is like that we, yes, if there was more love towards us, it would, it would feel the same kind of connection as we do with a child. But children have unconditional love. And like you said, they don't have all the complexities
right.
created. I didn't say crazy, I said created complexities of the world. And and that's ultimately the whole world needs more love. And what I want to do, and I know your work with men is the same, is help us create an environment of love. So
Absolutely.
that's the ultimate goal. And that, like, God in our heart, love in our heart, like this is the
Right.
ultimate goal. And it's the complexities of the world that hinder that journey for all humans, I think. So that's kind of my take on it. I don't know, i
Absolutely. Well,
i
no,
went on a little long there, sorry.
no, 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 no. You're fine, man. You're fine. So, interesting enough that when you were talking, it made me think about there's a scripture in the Bible where Jesus meets the man at the pool of Bethesda,
Oh yeah.
and the water, and he explains to Jesus that at the time, at a certain time during the season, the water is stirred up, and once the water is stirred up, you would have to enter. But then he starts to explain that, well, that when I'm trying to enter, and I'm paraphrasing probably in a big way, but but so he explains to Jesus that when he tries to go in, another goes before him, and yet another goes before him. So he just feels like he's kind of perhaps pushed aside and less significant than others. So that being said, it makes me think about, again, going back to this young daughter who is able to love unconditional without the complexities of life. And where's that with from my own experience in dating and now married, where's that there was a need for the woman I was dating at one time, or even my wife sometimes, to try to explain certain things.
Okay.
Whereas that my love for her was or is unconditional, but she felt that she needed to explain it. She felt that she needed to tell me something about it as if it was as if it was changed my mind.
Mm.
And so I even have to share with her about the scriptures, where it's that God never leaves us nor forsakens us. And so he doesn't change his mind because you've got a set of conditions that don't line up with what how you think he's thinking that, well, those conditions that you just shared with me, they don't fit into here. So you are not lovable. No soup for you, as Seinfeld would say,
Certainly.
or the soup Nazi. But any event, so just and again, this is an open question for you to expand, because I think sometimes that with men who are in that space, who are able to love unconditionally, we come against um, our significant others, our wives, who have a set of conditions, almost seeming like the man at the pool of Bethesda, and they feel a need to give us these explanations and why you're not getting more hugs, or that kind of thing.
Well, um so is your question, how do I feel about those explanations?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, it's that, but then it's also thinking, just kind of thinking, well, wait a minute now. Like you said, maybe if I did XYZ, I would get more hugs.
Right.
And so now the flip side of that is that maybe that it's not something more that you could do. Maybe she has to have an explanation for why she can't give hugs.
Well, so to go right back to the beginning of our conversation, I'm going to lean on expectations.
Mm, mm,
um, if there was more X, then I'd be even working even harder.
yeah.
Uh, I believe that's a place of vulnerability,
Mhm.
but I also don't believe it's necessarily responsible. I think in knowing thyself, you know what motivates you, and it's internal, it's not external.
Hmm.
So we don't live in a perfect world, and I think, as I mentioned, um, with a child, they have, the heart of a child.
Right.
Um, if my partner is explaining why they don't show me love I expect,
Hmm.
I suspect one of two things are happening. Um, they're trying to communicate with me something that's missing
Hmm.
through what they think is my language. I can't speak for anyone else. I'm
Right.
taking guesstimates here.
Right.
Um, because the other thing I would say is possibly happening, or I don't know how I would phrase it as a statement, but I would say, why does someone need to explain to me why they're not giving more hugs? If I feel like getting a
Hmm.
hug, I should create the environment, and that's what I was saying about it
Hmm.
earlier.
Interesting.
I need to ask myself, what am I doing to create hugging environments, if
Hmm.
that's what I'm looking for? Um, because uh, I know who I am. I know my worth.
Right. Right.
I know, in my heart, deep down, I know all my faults. Maybe I'm not aware of all of them, but I seek to be aware of them. And if I don't feel like there's love between my partner, for whatever reason, whether it's one little act or it's an ongoing thing,
Right.
then I go back to my easy access structure. What's the
Hmm.
problem? I want to solve it, but I
Right.
have to ask myself, how do I solve that in the integrity of myself,
Hmm.
and also, because I love her, in the integrity
Hmm.
of my partner?
Sure.
And I
Sure.
think for me, that's kind of nails down the complexity of this. Like, uh when you're only dealing with yourself, there is a simplicity of, I know what I need, I know what I want, I know how to get it. Um but when you're in a duality, that's going to be a little more complex. So I guess my response to your question is, like, is what is the scenario? Why is my partner explaining why they're not giving more hugs? you
Hmm.
know uh
Interesting.
um Part of me feels, there's sort of like this macho, masculine, ingrained thing of me that
Mhm.
says, like, well, that's needy. That's needy of
Right.
me to do that. But
Hmm.
I think it's human nature to want to feel loved.
Absolutely.
Um, to lighten up, to lighten up the conversation a little bit. In the example of the gentleman of the pulpit, Bethesda, is like, if I feel like I'm getting pushed aside, I need to make my way to the pool. And if I remember correctly, uh, Jesus says everyone has access to the pool. Like, you
Mhm.
don't need to feel that way. It's been a long time since I uh, referenced scripture, but I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure that was sort of the answer that was given. But so for me, if I feel like I'm getting pushed aside at the pool, well, that's my problem, and I
Mhm.
need to deal with it. And so, who I am or how I show up at the pool is what makes me who I am. I won't be affected by the other guys who are trying to get in the pool faster, because I know I'll get in there when it's my time, or I can live with the fact that they might need it more. Um, and I think my answer is a little bit high level and a bit privileged, to be honest,
Mhm.
because there's lots of examples that could trickle down from I'm not getting what I need in life, like from people who are disadvantaged. Um, but I think in relation to what you're talking about in relationships specifically, I would reference that, like, I need to make way for whatever's not happening.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
when you joke about telling your daughter, do it this way or don't do that, or like,
Right.
behave, you're joking,
Yeah.
and you're joking because there's nothing more precious than keeping the purity of a child's heart pure.
Yeah. For sure.
And I don't know about you, but I still tell my kids to stop that and behave. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I regret things I say to my kids on a weekly basis, and I
Yeah.
reflect on that, and I try to figure out how to make that different. And
Yeah. Absolutely.
often lean on my partner for that advice.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know,
I mean, yeah. That's part of being human, man. That's part of being
yeah,
human. And I'm gonna go back to that pool of Bethesda for a moment because I think that sometimes with men, especially just different conversations that you and I have had, when
mhm,
you're coming from a space where you're comfortable with who you are, you know,
right,
um, and you know that, like you talked about earlier, about with your leadership skills and coaching and things of that nature, you've done it long enough. You've done it long enough, whereas that you know that if I put A into this bowl and I put B into this bowl and I put C into this bowl, it produces these results, whatever that those results are, X. We'll call them X. And you've done it enough times to say, you know what? Okay, just rinse, repeat, and that kind of thing. So you've done it enough times where you've gotten these results. And at what point do you uh, maybe build up the courage, perhaps, to try and look at it from a different angle? Because, or at least a space from understanding, whereas that you can ask, you can, as you mentioned earlier, leaning on her, you can lean on her to get a greater perspective.
Yeah, goes back to the first, you know, the first scripture you quoted.
Mhm.
You have to seek to have knowledge. I mean,
Right, right.
I think I think you bring up a really valid point. I feel like, and I've made posts about this in the past, and I've talked to other men about it. What is the driver? Like, when is it that you change? So X, Y, Z worked for you. Um, I'm a good example. So I was a single man. I mean, I had relationships, but I
Mhm,
was a single man until my mid 30s, late 30s actually. And then all of a sudden, an instant family. And I had taken multiple soul searching trips. I'd done therapy. I'd done psychedelics. I'd done all kinds of things to explore myself, and I really
mhm,
felt like, I know myself.
mhm,
And until I had a partner who was strong enough or willing enough to stick around through it,
mhm,
uh, and also having kids to reflect on it, did I not like it was not until then that I really, really started deep diving.
mhm,
And then you're motivated by your family, you're motivated by the outcomes if you don't do it. Um, and so sometimes it feels like, when you ask that question, I feel like men often need the pain
mhm.
uh, to do that look. Again, generalizing, but it does often feel that way. And I often ask men, like, what, if a brother's gone to therapy already, and they're doing it again. It's like, well,
Mhm.
it didn't work last time. Why didn't it work?
Right, right,
Right? Why
right.
didn't it stick?
Mhm,
And I think there's a opportunity for hearts to be open, minds to be opened. Sometimes it's a matter of looking at it a certain way, and sometimes
right,
the switch goes on, and sometimes there's enough pressure or pain to make it work or make a man
right.
work hard enough. I know dudes who are working 4 jobs because they got 6 kids, and they
Mhm,
keep working those 4 jobs because they got to pay for their kids, um, and they're not doing uh, therapy, but they're certainly probably reflecting on themselves as they've
right,
asked themselves, "Why do I do this? Because
right,
I'm
right.
in service to my family."
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. One of the things, as a man, one of the things that I have found absolutely challenging on many, many different levels, man, many different levels,
Hmm.
that has stretched me, that has stretched me, and it has stretched me. That is learning how to love.
Okay.
And it is an exercise in itself. It's an exercise that, or exercising, I should say, that never ends. And when I say that, I'm not complaining by any stretch of the imagination. I am saying that it is work that to be done. And I think what you were saying earlier, you kind of just you alluded to it,
Hmm.
that there is a huge responsibility for us as men. And I absolutely agree with that. And I think to the point where is that even the Bible says men are to love their wives. Uh, and that's a great responsibility. That's a great responsibility because I think last time we talked, I can't remember, but the last time we talked, I might have came up with some other stuff, but I think the last time we talked, I mentioned for me personally, I was looking for a father growing up. Um,
Right.
and I didn't have a father. My stepdad was there, and he was an absolutely excellent provider, hands down, a wonderful person, excellent provider. But I was needing that attention from a man, from my father, and I was on a quest to find that. And later on in life, man, I would find myself just going through the challenges of having to love someone in my mind who was unlovable, and and turn it this way, upside down, and just look at it from many different angles, but still on a quest to find love and to be loved. And that quest led me to a relationship with Jesus Christ, my faith. But in doing so, the work didn't stop, because eventually I had to become the very thing I would become the very thing I was looking for.
Right.
And so, even going back to the title of the broadcast, Men Are Simple, you know, obviously it's so much more to that very statement. Because love is not simple. When you've been given a task, a commandment to love thy wife, love your wife, it's not simple, because she's going to do some things or say some things that's not absolutely lovable, and it can come from her place of hurt, her own pain, of place of trauma, something that she's dealing with. It can come from various different spaces, but we as men
Yeah.
learn how to take those punches and know that, hey, there's something deeper that she might be dealing with.
Absolutely.
What say you? I know
Yeah.
that's out there.
Well, hey, listen, Curtis. First of all, thanks for sharing so vulnerably. Like that's, I admire that. That's honorable. You know, you seem to understand your journey in that regard, and I honor you for sharing that with us. Uh, and I'm sorry that happened. I can relate. You know,
Mhm.
the whole time you're talking, I think about loving myself. You know, like how
Yeah,
like
yeah,
when
absolutely.
did I? And I know that's what you're inferring a bit as well.
Mhm.
But it all reflects, and we are love. We are love, and we reflect love in that way, and like the blue sky answer is this: like love is pure, and if you've got a handle, and no one's perfect, like
Sure.
Jesus showed anger uh in his time, and you know the enlightened folks, they're not perfect. Like
Absolutely.
enlightenment isn't the end. It's not,
Right,
it's
right,
there's not a final destination with love.
right.
I think and this is what I spoke about earlier about being able to command myself. Like,
Mhm,
so my mind used to race. I used to, whatever my trauma, my history, it
mhm.
affects the way I react.
Sure.
And if you fall into a place of defensiveness, then yeah, you're not prepared to hear the other person's challenges. You're not prepared to create space. You're not prepared to react in a way that's responsible for the situation. And there's always this kind of interesting balance between, is it my responsibility, to um, create space for whatever's happening with the other person? Well,
Hmm,
maybe
that's
it's
interesting.
not, but I certainly would like I'd certainly like someone to create space for me. So again, this is like, that's another version of the hug. You make room for the hug.
Sure,
And if
sure.
you're going to ask for the ability to receive understanding for when you're not a perfect father or a perfect
Right.
man, then yeah, you need to have command over the way you respond to your partner when they're not in their perfect form, because
Right.
we're not going to be perfect. I mean, relationships are lovely and wonderful and amazing, and they've got all these rewards in their work. You wake up every
Right.
morning, and one of you talks about how your sleep was, and it's like, I slept horribly, or I didn't sleep, and one,
Right, right,
sometimes it's me complaining, sometimes it's my partner.
right.
And that's a very, very basic
Mhm.
uh life challenge. I mean, sleep's very important, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah,
There's so
yeah.
many more complex things. So, um, what came up for me when you were talking was the phrase "I'm fine."
Mm,
You know, um, it's a challenging world right now. The world is very
sure,
challenging,
sure.
and a lot of us gentlemen in our generation, I think you and I are probably in the same generation, but guys both in our generation before us and definitely men still in generation below us or after us, I should say, not below us, uh, have not had role models. Many grew up without men and, as a father in their life. Many grew up with troubled families. I think our generation was probably the biggest generation of divorce rates starting, and that
Yeah.
changed in complexity. And so there was all these different things, and the world shifted, both for better and for worse. Definitely for better, because in the old days, men there was a way men were listened to, and uh, and that was it. That was the end of that story. It was like, dad, you listen to dad. But I don't think that's true love. I don't think that's exuding love. So
Absolutely.
as we evolve, we need to learn how to manage what evolution we need to do in our hearts and our minds, um, and being able to command for our partners, command ourselves for our
Right,
partners,
right,
so that we
right,
can show up.
right.
You know, that's how we show love. And I think what I've found is it's easier to love myself when I have confidence in myself,
Mm,
to know that I have the ability. So, through my mental fitness journey, having the ability to recognize things and command myself and come out on the love end with a way of love,
right.
uh, has been an exercise. It's been a practice. I
Mm,
literally have a mental fitness gym where I do those workouts so that I
mhm,
can show up and then put myself in a place of love, so I can feel
right.
confident that, because hey, listen, it's, excuse my language, but it feels pretty shitty when you act like a jerk with your family, like,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
and nobody wants to be there.
absolutely. Yeah, I have certainly been there, brother. Trust me, I have certainly been there, and just
Yeah,
having those crazy and just off the chain days, and just acted like a real jerk,
yeah,
And I'm going to share a story that years ago, a relationship I was in, um, and it's gonna be a vulnerable piece, but I'm okay with that.
okay,
But either way, I had uh, been in a relationship for a while, and during that relationship, I had just she was cheating and just and just doing things that were not worthy of having a relationship, or at least the right relationship that I wanted.
right,
And so I started this thing that I'm not proud of, and I was saying things and doing things that I shouldn't have said. And I hate to even use the word, but it was mental and verbal abuse. That's what I did, and I'll be very candid with you. And and I, um, that went on for a little while, and I don't know how long, but it went on a little while to the point where I was angry with myself, man, because that wasn't me. I was angry with myself for just doing that, for allowing her to press my buttons. But I would find out later on that there was more stuff behind it. It wasn't just her. It was just more stuff behind it, and just being fed up with the probably even previous relationships before that. Just a
right,
combination of a lot of different things.
yeah,
And then I remember I had listened to this. I had created this podcast. My son was, I can't remember how old he was, but I allowed my son to I asked him to record the the outro on the podcast for me. And the outro went, "Words are powerful, use them wisely." And so as I listened to the podcast, I remember listening to this person. It was me. I said, "Wait a minute. That's the person I wanted to be. That person right there.
mm,
That's me." As the tears rolled down my face, and just angry with myself, but yet at the same time relieved that you mentioned about pain earlier, relieved to a huge point, because I had reached that place where I needed to see the pain that I was causing not only her, but causing myself because I was uncomfortable. It completely put me out of character with my own self or with how friends and family know me.
Yeah.
And, but anyways, man, for people to say that God does not heal, I think there's a huge error in that thinking, because uh, since that time, I don't have issues like that anymore. Because when the times got tough, there was, you mentioned about low confidence. Times got tough, low confidence for myself. I needed to hear some. I needed to hear the words of someone who was greater than me, uh, that was bigger than me, whose thoughts were above my thoughts.
Yeah, that's a form of mentorship. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I needed to hear those things. And so oftentimes I would find myself going back to the word and just reminding myself, this is what I need. This is who I am. It's not the circumstances that have made me, which they had done at that time, but I can undo those things.
Right.
So again, I just wanted to share that because we all get to that place, and and if it's not verbal abuse or mental abuse, it's something else. It's something else. It's We all are dealing with challenges across the board, but you know in order to get to a place where, um, as the title suggests, that men are simple, um, at the end of the day, it does become a simple thing. And it doesn't mean that you're not working for it. Trust me,
Mm.
it does not mean that you're not working for it. It does not mean that you're not toiling and pulling up roots and the dandelions and the bad grass, and realigning things with your trimmer, as it needs it, from time to time. It's work, but at the end of the day, we are all capable of coming out polished. You know,
Yeah, you're seen, Curtis. You're seen. I see you.
yeah, absolutely,
I see you.
absolutely. Any thoughts on that, Mark?
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, self love and the ability to forgive yourself, and I can't change the past.
Absolutely.
I I recognize, as a father, some
Hmm.
things really needed to change. I always worry about my eldest. He 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 was the first. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I came from
Yeah,
a background that didn't lend to it. I wanted to do my best,
sure, sure, absolutely.
and every moment's a chance to be a self leading human. Leading
Absolutely,
with your heart,
absolutely,
leading with love. So you continue polishing. He said earlier that it
absolutely,
doesn't end. It's not. It's
man.
not a. There's no destination. It's just a continue. It's the. It's
You know
the.
how to. Oh man, you're polishing. You're polishing
That's
up some
right.
things
I
until.
got, I got lots of room here to polish. So it's the high road. You want to travel the high road, And
Yeah,
I traveled the road less traveled for many many years, and
yeah,
it
yeah,
wasn't fun. I mean, it was fun in a different way, but it wasn't
yeah, yeah,
fun,
absolutely,
you know.
absolutely. But
So yeah, I hear you.
I think at some point, the challenges and the pressure that we're all under, on some level, I think that it is really pushing us. Like yourself. I've traveled the high road for years and years,
Yeah.
and not wanting to answer those tough questions. And even though the tough questions presented themselves, whether it was someone asking that question verbally, or whether it was through the bunch of circumstances, the the natural question would pop up.
Right.
I would sweep it under the rug. Been there, done that. Got the T-shirt, the hat, and been there, done that. But
Yeah.
I seen that life has a tendency to keep presenting the same door. the same door. Or my mom would say when I was younger, it's the same gift, and it might dress itself up differently, but it ends up being the same gift. And the challenge was is that I just in my doing or trying to take the high road, um, just wanted to that old saying. What's the definition of insanity?
Repeating the same behavior over and over again and
Yeah,
expecting a different outcome. Yeah.
absolutely. And that was me at a particular time. But at some point, life kept presenting the same thing, and it just I don't know. I could be wrong, but I mean, for me personally, I think it just drove me to a place where it just sits you down, man.
And this is the ability to be, to bounce back. I mean,
Yeah.
this what I was saying about earlier, but the difference is I still make the mistake of not being conscious of how I'm showing up for
Mm,
someone or for my partner or whoever, my kids,
right.
someone at work. And I let myself, you know, reflect on it, change the behavior, and bounce
Right.
back. Not always. I'm still like well, hell, if you don't want to talk to me, I'm out of here. That
Right.
happens sometimes still, definitely. But the ability to command where you're at and where you come from, and
Right. Right.
that's ultimately the best way to find love in your heart, in my opinion.
Right. Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely.
There's a joke I know from when I'm much younger, and there's a man and he's at his house, and there's a storm coming, and some people drive by and they said, "There's a flood coming. You like jump in the car, like get some stuff,
Right.
jump in the car." Do you know this one?
Mhm.
Do you know this one?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
familiar with it. It's told a
Okay.
bunch of different ways, but
Oh yeah, yeah. So then he goes, "Oh no, it's okay. God will save me." And
Mhm.
they say, "Okay." And so they drive off, and then the water's coming up, and he's on the second floor looking out the window, and a rowboat comes by and goes, "Come on, the flood's getting worse. You got to jump in." Like,
Right.
no, no, God will save me. And he says, "Oh, okay." They say, "Okay." Well, and they row off, and
Mm.
next thing you know, he's on his roof, and a helicopter comes around and says, "Come on, you got to jump on." And like, this
Right.
your house is about to be covered, and it's just going higher. It's no, no, God will save me. And so lo and behold, he ends up in heaven, and he says, "God, you know, you, what happened? Like, you didn't save me." And God says, "What are you talking about? I gave you all these opportunities.
Yes.
You didn't look
Yes.
up, he didn't look them in the eye. You could have done better
Mm.
to see the opportunities." And I
Absolutely.
think that's it. We got to look at the opportunities. And I think that's a really important aspect of reflection, and knowing thyself is looking for opportunities.
Absolutely.
And
Hmm.
that's one of the ways of the love. That's one of the ways of sage, is
Absolutely.
like to innovate and explore.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Hmm. Well, it's interesting, Mark, because even with the joke that you just shared, um, how life in itself presents those opportunities,
yeah.
and can no one person, I don't think, that's just my take on it. I don't think, no, I don't think there's one person on earth that can say that they didn't have the opportunity to change. They didn't have the opportunity to look at a certain thing, a particular situation from a different angle, or perhaps. And I think that life has a way of putting people together, husband and wife, two men together, sharing great conversations. You
Yeah.
know, life has a way of putting these things together in front of us, and each situation presents an opportunity to heal. Each situation presents an opportunity to receive love, because sometimes the challenge is that we don't know how to receive love. We don't know how to receive the simple things that are sometimes without.
Every moment is the opportunity to turn around.
Absolutely.
Every moment. I mean, at any time, anybody can decide to be different and do different.
Sure.
And absolutely, I think love is the uh, traffic light.
Yeah.
If you
Mm.
push the crosswalk button, and love shows up, that's when you have the ability to cross the road and go a different direction.
Mm.
That was a kind of a weird metaphor, but
No,
that's
I absolutely like it, but I think the challenge is that how many people are going to press that button? How many people are going to are so accustomed to seeing the um, the stop sign,
yeah,
with no options, or at least in their mind, in their own minds, with no option. A woman meeting the same particular man all the time, or at least in her mind, she thinks she is, and then a man meeting the same particular woman all the time, or at least again in his mind, that's what he how he perceives it. But and it very well could be, again, obviously it's his reality, but what could he do differently to, you know, probably a host of different things, but see something different.
yeah. No, I mean, behavior has to change, you know.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so when my partner tried to give me feedback and I felt like it was attacking me,
Mm,
it's always going to end up the same way because I'm always going to react the same way
right, right,
until I just convince my mind it's worth doing it differently.
right.
And I think this is actually one of the challenges with sometimes with therapy, sometimes with coaching is, it's one thing to say, hey, react differently. Um, but if you're in a relationship with a partner and it used to be good and you had kids and then things kind of went downhill, and we see a lot of guys in Facebook groups for fathers and dads. I see a lot of this. It's like it used to be great and it's been 10 years of crud.
Mhm,
And I think, well, like, what have you been doing for 10 years? That programming in your brain turns into neural pathways that's all they know.
right.
So you have to change that reaction so that your brain has the capacity to change. And you can do it in an instant.
Mhm,
Sometimes the realization of changing, the pain of how hard it might be to change and get out of your head or get out of your structure or be like not be stubborn versus how hard it is to or the pain you're going to go through if you don't change. Like that, those are the two different pains. So I just got distracted by the screen there. But
oh,
yeah,
sorry.
so like that's the difference between like the pain of not changing versus the pain of changing,
Mhm,
and that's sometimes a motivator, but the motivation of pain will only get you off the couch. To get
right.
get across the finish line, you have to see the trophy at the end. You have to kind of be going towards
Absolutely,
something. So
absolutely,
that's a different thing.
absolutely. Yeah, so, guys, we have been talking for a little while here, and Mark has blessed me with his presence here on the broadcast, and
I'm honored, honored.
absolutely, absolutely, and I am too, Mark, as well. Great, great sharing and great content. Whenever you're doing these kind of shows, it's absolutely, no one person has all the answers.
Oh yeah,
No perspective
absolutely.
is, yeah, for sure. No one perspective is going to be the one that's engraved in stone or etched in stone as the Ten Commandments or anything like that. But uh, it is possible to share. It is possible to get different perspectives. So as we're wrapping it up, if any individual feels so inclined to be a part of the broadcast, you're absolutely more welcome to. There's a link, and the whole link piece didn't work out for me. I was doing
Oh no,
something, but
no
yeah,
technical stuff
yeah,
sometimes.
technical stuff. But nevertheless, Mark, I know you've got to tend to your family, and I got to do the same. And so, um, any last thoughts, or
Oh
summary
man,
of what we've shared, or
just keep it up, Curtis. Like this is what we need. We need to
Mhm.
spread the message of love. We need to spread the message of changing as men and doing the work that it takes to be better. We need to forgive ourselves,
Yes,
in
sir.
the moments, and we need to also be dedicated to be different. Um, I, this is my closing thought on men are simple.
Mhm.
Uh, I think the world's changed. I think simplicity for all humans comes down to individuality of love and the singularity of love,
Mhm.
in our hearts. I think aside, if you think of anything else or look outside of that idea, you're not going to find simplicity because the world's complex, and you can find simplicity in love. And I think that's really what I'd urge people to focus on. And that's what I remind myself daily of.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about what you do and where we can find you.
I wasn't really prepared for that. What I do is I create brotherhood pods. I call them pods, where we get together with 4 other men, and there's an 8-week program I have that help men reprogram their brains from all the learned behavior, creating the ability to change their way of thinking, creating the ability to stop walking on eggshells, start reacting in ways they want to know, and understand the triggers they have, but also immediately command themselves and evoke the way of love. Um, and The program has results that are unbelievable. I've got men who are able to say within 5 weeks, like, my life is different. I've been through the program a couple times. I've run a couple of the groups,
Mm,
and it's just unbelievable, the outcomes of it. So for me, that's the foundation. Once we've gone through that foundation, because like many men, we've been to therapy, we've done all these other things. Sometimes life forces us into change, but it doesn't stick. And
right.
so for me, this foundation program is very important before we create strategies to help you, uh, a person, help a man navigate the challenges that they identify that
Right.
they want to address. So that's why I call myself a dad strategist. So we build strategies together, but I don't believe a man's going to create a strategy for himself until he's got clarity of mind. And
Mm,
that's our ultimate goal, is creating clarity of mind.
yeah. Well said. Well said. Well said. So,
Fa-
lastly,
just, I was
on
going to say, facebook.com/me Mark D,
mhm,
MARKDEE, as it is on the screen there. And
okay.
yeah, that's it. That's where
All
you
right. Good
find me, to be
stuff.
honest. I've got a link with all the things, but I'm not going to send
Well, you
that
know
link.
what? Once we, I don't know. I think you might have access to the chat area as well. So you're more than welcome to put that information in the chat area.
All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate the offer.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. All right, guys. This is going to wrap up the broadcast. We've been talking about men are simple, and what we've discovered, at least I think that me and Mark have discovered, is that there's a lot more to that than the simple message there that I've titled the broadcast with. Men are simple. So there's a lot more to that, because each of us as men, that simplicity means something different. Um, as Mark so wonderfully shared with us, yeah, there's a lot more to that. So that being said, guys, we will be doing more of these broadcasts. I will be absolutely calling more on Mark as availability is becomes open, I should say.
I'd love to come back. I enjoyed chatting with you, Curtis. I think you got great insight, and I'm honored to be
Yeah,
part of it.
absolutely, man. Likewise, likewise, the same. When you're having these discussions, guys, it's work, because it takes sometimes it takes the other person to pull on you, if you will, and to help you get those things out of you. Sometimes, and when you're doing a show by yourself, it can be missed because of the anxiety that comes with doing a broadcast. Sometimes, at least for me, but
The
it is.
difficulty of scripting, all the points you want to get
Yeah,
across, and
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So once again, everyone, thank you for joining us. We will be back with another broadcast. I'm not sure when, but we will. And this has absolutely been a wonderful conversation. Again, thank you, Mark. And thank you, Lenora. That's Lenora. It's my wife there. Thank you.
Hey, that's great support.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful
Much
support.
love.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we're going to wrap it up, guys, and we're going to say good night. The replay is going to be available, so you can absolutely watch the replay. Like I said, we'll be back here real soon here, and again, check out those comments or that were left, or leave your own comments, ask questions, and we'll try and answer those questions. And Mark, you're absolutely more than welcome to answer any questions you feel led to be a part of.
No problem.
All right, guys. So we're going to say good night, and
Good
we'll
night.
talk to you soon. Ciao, everybody.